Hello and welcome everybody, I'm Barbarian and this is Victoria 3's Dev Diary number 49 graphic overview. This one was written by Max, the art director of Victoria 3, and this is a very important Dev Diary because the UX and how you perceive the game, so the aesthetics of the game, ultimately give you this first subconscious impression, the first subconscious attempt of immersion, and if that doesn't work, then you're going to have a fairly bad time in the game. I play so many grand strategy games. Just yesterday I tested 2 games that are set in space, and the primary issues that I had with both of them was basically the UX. It's so difficult to both get the UX functionality but also the aesthetics right. This is something that you definitely should keep track of. Let me know what you think about the aesthetics of course, Victoria 3. I will give you my view as we go through it. Now, I gotta tell you though, I was in the fairly pessimistic camp. I always said I think we're probably going to be looking at 2023, but with how things are standing, if we now get this Dev Diary, this is something that really does make me think, you know what, you don't talk about the aesthetics in this depth unless you are, actually working on finalizing them. So the way I see it, maybe we are looking at Q3, Q4 when it comes to the release. Since PDXCon is in September, and that is where, you can play the game, I would argue it has to be past that, so maybe October, maybe November. I doubt December because that makes it very difficult to actually update the game. Over Christmas you have to fix the bugs and so on, and you can't really do that when nobody's in the office, so I don't think that is true. But think about it, we get this Dev Diary, then in a couple of weeks I'm pretty sure we enter the Swedish holiday phase, the summer holidays, and then they come back in August. I think it's pretty appropriate to say that maybe we are indeed looking at that sort of date. Let me know what you think. Now anyway, let's jump in and let's explore this topic. The game's visual pillars center around elegance, hopefulness, and some of the older visual elements of the Victorian era. This will be present within each visual category and discipline. To start off, a lot of things have happened visually over the last year. Even in these last few weeks, a lot of tweaks and improvements have been made thanks to the team. Right, so let's start with the interface. The components of our interface have not changed drastically, but have rather been refined, and more illustrations have been incorporated into menus that are very text-heavy or where a bit more flavor helps. In general, the interface direction wants to provide visuals that are elegant and ornate, but not too heavy, with a palette that complements the visuals of the map and illustrations, making icons and button interactions pop out from it. Working closely with the UX designers, we aim to put the visual emphasis and focus where your important decisions can be made, ensuring that interactable objectives and buttons are clear and have an order of importance. UX is insanely important. I actually think that most non-PDS devs, that try to emulate PDS games, that try to overcome them, I feel like most of them work too heavily in mechanics and not enough in UX. If you can't really grab somebody and say these mechanics, you will understand them, this world, you will be immersed because of the UX, then you can't really be a competitor in GSG, I think, and many people neglect that. I mean, that doesn't mean, of course, that Paradox's UI is perfect. It certainly isn't, but where I'm coming from there is that I've been playing some other GSGs, and it's very noticeable that there's a tech advantage when it comes to the quality of UX and immersion through UX. Let's take a look at this right here. This is the politics interface. I think the background might be new. You can see the Bonapartist party as well as the clerical party. Makes a lot of sense here. These are the armed forces and the Catholic Church. These aren't in any parties. What I found very interesting of this screen isn't actually visual changes. I gotta tell you, when I compare this to any earlier political screen that we have seen, I don't see too big of a difference anywhere. However, this is interesting. Wants to join Bonapartist party. There are still so many elements when it comes to parties, when it comes to the political system of Victoria 3, where I am not sure exactly how it works. They want to join the party. What does that mean? How do they join the party? Can I say yes? Can I say no? What goes into that? Why do they want to join the party? Can I counteract that? Do I see the factors that influence it? Again, so many questions, but that is a topic, of course, that isn't too relevant here. I just noticed that and wanted to point it out. Other than that, I find it interesting as well that this is the Bonapartist party. If I'm not mistaken, he's a Bourbon, right? Louis-Philippe d'Orléans is a Bourbon, and they are the Bonapartist party. And I find this, since if you support the monarchy in Victoria 3, I'm pretty sure you don't go into the direction of saying, and this goes over, like, this is way removed from this as a, an aesthetics Dev Diary, but I still want to bring it up because it pops up right here in the screen. The Bonapartist party implies that they support a Bonapartist candidate. This would mean that they are not in favor of Louis-Philippe d'Orléans, but I don't think it works that way, right? I think this is just a name. I think this is just the monarchist party, and I think that is very unfortunate. Think about it. It doesn't make any sense that this is called the Bonapartist Party, because this is not a Bonapartist monarchy, and yet, I believe, look at the... Isn't it funny that it's the Bonapartist Party, but then this is the flower of the Bourbon family? Yeah, I don't know. This the naming schemes, they're not too convincing for me. Now, this is the building interface, and I prepared this here. This is the interface that was shown in Dev Diary, I believe, 30, right? When you look at this and then compare it to this one that is in this Dev Diary, they are not that different. The pattern here is the same. This pattern over there is also the same, so not too much was changed there. And let's be real, it looks pretty good. The only thing that I can really notice is that the potential buildings are now denoted in a different way. When there is something that hasn't been built at all, then it is just a 0, but, it still seems to be clickable, whereas here it was just grayed out as a whole. But yeah, that seems to be the biggest change. I can't really see anything else. Now, the outliner for the market UI right here, I'm pretty sure also hasn't really changed. You can see the luxury goods quite clearly because they are gold, they are purple. Then we see the golden ones. I'm pretty sure those are industrial tools, right? I don't think they're staples either way. But yeah, no, this is actually fairly good UI work. Well, fairly. No, this is good UI work because you can quite and directly and very easily tell, hey, is this good expensive? Is it something that is in high demand? What is the balance like? Okay, this good is expensive, but the actual demand for it is fairly low if you compare it to, for example, a liquor. So we're talking about something where it's very easy to tell what is important, what does the data say, where do we go from there. This UI, I'm a big fan of, and I like that, as you activate something, that is at least what I assume, you activate the category of luxury goods, of military weaponry, that you get this sort of frame here. I think right now all of them are active, which is why they have different categories here as well. This is really neat. I think you can tell very easily what is going on. Now, let's talk about illustrations. As illustrations are being incorporated more frequently in the game, we want to ensure they have a consistent style. A style that is something of a mix between modern digital art and some older 19th century style and technique. Of course, they have to unify both of those because you can't get around some modern aspects in a game's UI. We also try to ensure that they all have a hopeful, though some quite grim, feel to them that gives flavor to your decisions and the events that do occur while still not discouraging you. The illustrations for events are quite vast, and with so many different possible events occurring, one thing we have tried to ensure is that all different cultures of the game are represented within events. The downside of this decision is that some of our events will look pretty specific to a culture while applicable to almost everyone. This is something we are very aware of and will look to expand upon post-launch. This is the very classic, I think, grand strategy problem, but in a different variation. Usually, the way you have it is that you only ever have one cultural circle represented. For example, you have an event and that is exclusively European. Or, for example, you have an event and that is exclusively, what makes sense here, for example, I mean, EU4 is very European. Stellaris, it could be very human-minded, right? And then you're looking at a situation where if you don't play humans in Stellaris, where you don't play Europeans in EU4, you will say to yourself, wow, this doesn't do anything. It doesn't represent my culture. It doesn't represent my nation here that I'm playing at all. They did the opposite with the same problem outcome, but ultimately it feels a bit differently, I think. Where they said, instead of just having European representation, we're going to have everybody represented and going to make it so that everybody has enough representation to cover all events later. Again, you can't really get around this problem. Usually it means that just one culture is represented or one cultural area. In this case, it means that it's the entire world, except it's, for all cultural areas, meaning nobody will have this is exactly me feeling. I don't think this is bad. I think this is not really good either. It's just a different approach, but the problem remains, of course, to have a game that covers the world. To make enough art for that is basically impossible. Now, what do we have here? Defamatory article, event in Oromia. A newspaper called the Oromia Daily News has printed a bigoted article about the Maasai people living there. We can suppress the article or we can let it be released. Absolutely violized, a lot of it. That won't matter to those who read it though, they will eat it up. Suppress it or ignore it. See, this, for example, this image right here looks very Turkish to me. You have the classic outfits, you have the architecture right there. And maybe this is something that you might also get if you play in Japan, if you play in Austria, if you play in Russia, and so on. And that is, of course, is that accurate? No, very much not. But it makes it so that it's not just the European culture, where then the entire rest of the world doesn't feel represented whatsoever. It's the same issue that you have because it's so difficult to produce enough art assets. It's just that simple. Now, they also added character background illustrations. I really like this. I wish this was, less transparent. I wish this was a bit clearer because it's difficult to read. I really like these symbols. I gotta tell you this. I like them for sure, but it's tough to read this with the background being this this present. Now, the one thing that I will point out, and I think that only I would notice because I've seen it so often making thumbnails with CK3 characters, is that this right here suffers from the same thing that CK3 assets suffer from. Look at this right there. Right, you see this? This is basically where the back of the inside of this turban, of this headwear, doesn't have a texture. And it makes it so that you can see through it. In this case, you can see the background image right there. It's very, very present in several assets in CK3, and it's present right here. I hope they fix that. Personally, it drives me nuts. I talked, and it's ages ago at this point, but I talked about this to the ethnicities and portraits expanded modders for CK3, and I said this drives me nuts, and they're like, we can fix that, and they fixed it. I hope Paradox will also fix it. This is one thing that I can't. It just absolutely drives me crazy. Other than that, though, when you look at this general, right, this is Kalile Cherecha, and he is in a position. What is this flag? I've never seen this flag of Hara before. But he's in a position where you can see, okay, these are the troops that he commands. He's a general, he's a member of the landowners, he's a traditionalist, he's an Oriental Orthodox, neutral, age 32. Here you can see his specific commander traits, so they're all in one spot. That is very nice. And then here you can see where his battalions come from and who they are. This is honestly a pretty good interface card. I do wonder how often you will visit this one, though. Is this the one that pops up when you click on the generals and their armies? Yeah, I think it must be, right? So this is pretty neat. It actually puts him at the forefront of this card, which is quite interesting to me, rather than the army. Indeed. Illustrations for the different institutions, I love this. These are really good. Honestly, when we saw the institutions first, I wasn't very impressed from the visual style. I now like that they have this empty space here, because it gives you this visualization. Before that, this was empty, and I said to myself, why is there all this space? Just, you know, push it together. But this actually, it's nice, right? It makes you as a player slow down, look at this and say, yep, that's exactly what's happening. Those are the illustrations, those are the institutions that we have in our countries as the bobbies arrest, I can only assume, some protesters right there. Now, let's take a look at the map. The map of the world is something we've put a lot of effort into, making sure looks both very interesting yet soothing, and so that it doesn't compete in complexity with the interface and the actions you take. We also try to ensure a visual hierarchy of what is important to look at by balancing the complexity of assets as well as their scale. During next week's DD, I'll be talking about the elements that help make the map feel alive and how we visually change the world as the game progresses. The paper map has a lot of visual detail put into it, lots of small illustrations and details that make it more interesting to look at, alongside the scene with a table and objects surrounding it to contextualize that this is you overlooking the world as a whole. These are some of the longest sentences we've ever had. Trade in the Dardanelles Strait, right, so this is, these are the Dardanelles, this is Istanbul, Constantinople right over there. See, I gotta tell you, I really like the map. I'm a big fan. I think ultimately when it comes to the visual fidelity, Imperator Rome is unbeatable, but this has the visual fidelity because, you know, these are naturally growing cities. The buildings that you build are actually represented. The institutions like the farms right there, they are all present. This is really neat. I have talked about, you know, in the past, I've talked about so much about these paths. They look so nice. I don't like these trees. I'm not sure whether it's an issue of perspective. I'm pretty sure that when you play the game, you're not gonna have this angle in like 99% of cases, but these trees, they just look... They remind me of like Dark Souls humanity, you know, the humanity that you meet in the, when you go up to fight Manus in the DLC. They just look very odd to me. But when you look at this, for example, you look at the straits right here, when you look at this port right there, at the nice ships over there, when you look at this, this is a map that truly is alive. You can see the different cultural areas as well. Look at this right here, right? It's a fairly Western, it's a European style. Then you have the Turkish, I have to assume the Middle Eastern style, right? When you look at these things, you can see that the world is alive, that it changes, and you know that there is something to see in it. I like the map of Victoria 3 in general for sure. Yeah, just, I don't know. These trees, they really, really put me off. And it's just these trees, by the way. No, don't do it into a slideshow. When you look at these trees, I like these trees much, much more. They look much more alive. They look much more, almost painted. Can you see this here? They almost look like they are painted by somebody, you know, that went with a brush. Boom. Obviously, they are fairly low quality poly models. You know, that is the way that you get the performance going as well, no doubt about it. But with these, I don't know. They don't tickle my fancy. Either way, Rome in itself, of course, looks really, really neat. We can see some barracks here. We can see the Vatican City. Pretty good place here. Then here we have an Asian building set. I have to, or I want to assume... Oh yeah, look at that actually. I didn't notice it the first time I went through. This is the Great Wall of China. So we basically know now that this is China. And I like this. This is a really, really nice place. Is this Beijing? Is this Beijing with the Forbidden City? Might be the... I don't know what the Forbidden City exactly looks like. This is the town square. These are all just buildings. Maybe this is the Forbidden City. Either way, pretty cool. I really, really like that building housing style. We have come a long way from Victoria 2, I would say. Now the paper map here. I gotta tell you, in general, I'm a fan of the paper map. I'm a fan of this down here. This really adds to the immersion, to the flair of what you're looking at, to you playing the grand game, right? It really adds to this. But man, I am still... I don't think I'm in the minority here. I'm not that big a fan of the occupation stripes as they are in the game. But yeah, look at that. They have... This is the latest complete world map then. This is the latest, and I don't think... I think they did... Yeah, look at that. They changed Eupen Malmedy right over there. They addressed that. They did change, right? They teased that on Twitter, and I've gotten so many comments over the times, over the months, but they did change the border here in Syria. It is not the post-World War I border. Instead, it is, you know, just the accurate border from the time. Quite interesting. I love the map. It's a beautiful map, I think. It's just the occupation stripes are not really for me, I think. Right, now let's move on to characters. The characters of Victoria 3 aim to be visually representative not only of the stratas they inhabit, but also of their profession and its characteristics. While our visual pillars still stand even for the characters, ensuring that their appearance is a bit softer and filled with a bit of hope. They also show when they are not doing well, giving starving pups altered idle animations where they look displeased and hunched forward. We're still finding new ways of increasing the personalities of characters and their overall visuals, and look forward, giving them even more life in the future. This is an evolving discipline. Crusader Kings 3 has come so far from, you know, its beta state, from the release state to right now, where there are so many different expressions, so many different ways of a character expressing themselves. I think we're going to see plenty of changes post-release at any given moment, basically, because, again, this is something where Paradox as a whole, I think, is still experimenting at any given moment. So, yeah. I gotta tell you, though, even though, you know, again, this is an evolving discipline, this is going to be changing as it goes. I like this. This looks really good. These are rice farmers in Kachin. Would you use this as a rice farmer? I don't know. I've never been a rice farmer. But I gotta tell you, I especially like him. I think he looks very, very good as a character. There has been quite something that has changed. It has developed since we first saw the characters. I really enjoy the way they have ultimately designed these characters. We have the French heir right here, Ferdinand Philippe d'Orléans. Look at him, heir apparent in France. He's of the same dynasty as the king. I believe, actually, he's the one also that was in the screen, right? Let me check this. Heir apparent, yeah, that's him. Look at that fella. How could you not recognize this beard? And yeah, here you have the same case as with the general. Of course, I would like this to be a bit less transparent. You can see his traits right there. He's Catholic, he's neutral, age 26, and look at that. He looks quite glorious. I like, really, what they're doing here, where, you know, he is in the halls of power, he is in Versailles, and that is exactly where he's spending his time, and I do think that this adds a lot to this character, you know, as a representation of who he is and what his interests are. And yeah, I'm not surprised that the heir apparent is a royalist, right? Here we have Abu Bakr Ali. He's the Emir of Harar, and you can see, wow, this looks really good. I love this. I think they did some splendid work right here. Well, yeah, no, I'm actually very impressed by that. I do like the background as well. He's a politician, a landowner, traditionalist, Oriental Orthodox, and he's 37. And he's a cocaine addict. You know what? Let me actually... Diplomat, traditionalist, commander, reserved. He's a pretty run-of-the-mill heir, and this fella's like, let's get high, baby. All right, I really like this. Can you make him into a general? This really does look like you can make him into a general, right? Interesting. He does appear to be the leader of your nation. He's the emir, and I assume you can make him into a general. They did say that they changed this. Very happy to see it. Very, very happy to see it indeed. Here with the Oromo Sunni aristocrats in Oromia. yeah, they just look good. What do you want me to say? I really actually do like what they've done with this. I remember this exact pose initially when they showed Victoria 3's pops for the first time, and I said this looks so stilted. It looks so odd, but look at this. No, I really like the way this looks for sure. And here we have somebody aging, growing old .gif. Look at that. I really like it. I do wish that maybe at some point the kid might want to consider a different haircut. you know what, actually, so I really like this. But this poor kid's hairline, he was 5 years old and he already was 40. That's, you know, I mean, his hairline never changes. That is something I think that might want to be addressed in the future. I don't know about the outfit. Honestly, now that I think about it, I like the aging process in the face. You can really tell, you know, which age they are. This is something I think that CK3 did masterfully, and they clearly are working with that same template. But I wish clothing changes and maybe hairstyle changes would be something that you see more often. Especially because, I don't know, the kid in the uniform is a bit... It feels a bit odd to me at the very least. But the aging in itself looks very, very nice indeed. Now, the visual effects that we have in-game range from emphasizing certain button presses to atmospheric weather effects like rain, sand, and snowstorms. But where it's most prevalent is through wars and battles, where units fire devastating cannon shots or even flamethrowers, really emphasizing the situation. I really like the visuals, and I think, no, these are different trees. Yeah, look at these. These trees look so nice. I think I just actually dislike the trees that can be found in the Mediterranean area. They look so odd, whereas this looks like you can really feel how not civilized, basically, right? How natural the entire ecosphere here is in Sweden, I believe, right? This would be Sweden, this would be Norway. This looks so good. Yeah, no, I really enjoy this. I really just dislike what kind of trees are they? I don't like those. I can't say that I enjoy those. Sandstorms looks very good, man. The visuals on this map are very, very nice. I hope that if you want to interact with this province, that the sandstorm sort of dissipates, because this is quite overwhelming. Now, what do we have right here? A building being built. We got some farms, I believe. Is this Arabia? I think this goes into Mesopotamia, right? I think so, anyway. Alright, let's move on. This is where I gotta tell you, I'm very much not too happy with this. I think the flame textures, they did say that they changed them, and they do look better than last time. But as soon as you enter, you know, if you look at it from this angle, this is fine. This looks okay. But as soon as you change it into this angle, like right here, I don't know. I look at that and I'm thinking to myself, we could have more clutter in this region, because we don't need to get directly involved by microing units, right? But instead we have no clutter. And now it just looks like, I don't know, I think if you, you know, had more fire right here, maybe some dust, maybe some fog, some explosions, something like that, it could enhance this wall of fire significantly. On top of that, I do think it's pretty cool, and you can see this is actually just a pyramid. It's pretty cool that we have this representation, but I was really hoping of, like, you know, some trenches, maybe some battalions that start shooting at each other as line infantry, and then later on it's less that, and it might just be like a couple of soldiers, maybe a tank running around in these regions. This is fine, but we have to realize, and I say this from a consumer perspective, obviously, we have to realize that if you don't have micro, the front can be cluttered. It can be completely overwhelmingly cluttered, because you don't need to go and be like, oh, I need to select this unit and that unit. Oh, which of these cannons am I? You're not doing that, right? And if you're not doing that, it can be more cluttered. It can be more interesting looking. This right here, I'm not all too happy. I do like that. I don't think this is this devastation? If this is devastation, it would be pretty neat if the devastation actually spread, visually speaking, outwards from the battlefield itself. But I was very much hoping for a different visual style, I think, for the front in general. This one is something where I'm the least happy with, I think, when it comes to this dev diary. Technical solutions. For a lot of the neat details and dynamic elements of the game, we have technical art providing smart solutions to things like waves around shorelines, the clouds that provide depth, and fog of war to the map, as well as how country borders and occupied territories look. Yeah, no, the waves look very, very neat. I think we've talked about this in the past as well. I personally absolutely love the clouds. The clouds look like truly painted clouds. just gorgeous what they've done with those. You can see it here as well. These clouds, they clearly are thinner than the clouds right here, right? So this is something where you need to see, right? Which is why the clouds hide themselves. I can't talk anymore. Whereas here, you don't need to see that because you're not interacting with it right now. So the clouds can be there. And yeah, look at that, Open Malmedy. It is. Yeah, this is Open Malmedy. Very nice. So they did, without a doubt, fix that. The occupation stripes, not so sure. But I don't think this is news. I think this has been quite contentious. I would like to see different designs, like just the flag colors, just the, flag indication as it has been in earlier games. I'm not so sure whether I'm in love with that. I don't think I am. This should give you some insight into how we work on the visual side of Victoria 3. Next week, we'll have another dev diary from yours truly, with a more in-depth look at the living map and how things change through the course of the game. Very excited for that one as well, because this... we talked about this ages ago. In 1836, if you play in Japan, your pops probably should have very different, clothing, maybe very different, just approaches to anything than in 1936. When you look at a pop, in Japan in 1936, realistically speaking, you would see a lot of people in suits, for example, in old suits, of course. In 1836, you probably want to see traditional Japanese clothing much, much more often. Whether that is something that they can account for, big question. And the same goes, of course, for the map itself. How do the building styles change? How exactly is it determined how the building styles change? Is it cultural? Is it based on, what your empire is actually like? Is your empire an empire, or is it a republic? Is it, from that angle, I would like to see whether it impacts the actual map fidelity. Either way, very interesting dev diary. There are some visual things, and I think this is only fair. These sort of games, there will always be things where we can say, this doesn't look good. There are some things where I personally say, I don't like it. Let me know what you think, because that is, of course, the most important part, what the community as a whole think. And I'll leave you with this for the moment. I'll see you later, alligator.